All right, let's look at community ecology. A community is several different populations of different species that interact with one another within the same environment. There's different types of communities in different environments. For example, here we have a mountainous area. We have squirrels, moose, snowshoe hare, bear, red fox, wolf. And then over here we have a rainforest with very different populations. You also have things such as the desert, the pond, the ocean. All of these are different communities with a different group of populations, different species. How all of these species interact within their environment, that's what community ecology is all about. We need to look at the word habitat. A habitat is going to be the area where an organism lives and reproduces. Within that habitat, each organism is going to find its own ecological niche. An ecological niche. That's a very important vocabulary word. And it's going to be the role a species plays in its community, or more specifically, how does that species get the energy that it requires to survive? Where does it get its energy from? In the example down here, we have just this bank right here, the very edge and bank of this pond. And just in this small area, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ecological niches shown within one type of organism. So each one of these is a different population, a different species, but they all get their energy from the same area. For example, they have different ecological niches. The flamingo here is going to feed by straining mud through their bills from the bottom of this pond. The duck will eat the underwater plants. The avocets, they feed on the insects right here at the water's edge. The oyster catchers, they pry open the shells to get energy. The plovers, they hunt for small insects up on the sand. Each one of these has a different ecological niche. Therefore, they can share the same habitat and still have enough energy for each one of these populations to coexist. Another example of niche specialization is going to be the warbler. All of these different types of warblers, there's 6 or 5 here on the screen. There's more than that though out in the wild, but they all are able to share the same habitat within this spruce. The spruce trees, because they all utilize different areas of the spruce tree. So this warbler up here, and I can't read what type it is, it's like a Cape May. It only lives up here on the very top, and that is where it gets its nutrients from, its energy, eating insects up here at the top. Whereas this one right here, it uses kind of just below that, but only on the edges. This one here will get insects from the inside. Over here, just the very, very outside edges, and then we have the bottom. So each one of these has its own place within the spruce tree. They're able to coexist and have their own niches and have enough energy to support their populations together. Where two ecological niches may come into contact, that's going to be where competition occurs. For example, right here we have 2 different species of barnacles within the same habitat. The smaller barnacle is able to withstand low tides. So at low tide, these smaller barnacles are going to be exposed. And they're going to be exposed a lot more frequently than the larger barnacles down here. They're mostly going to be underwater. However, there's this like middle zone right here where both can survive pretty well. That's where competition is going to take place between the two. An area of competition is also going to provide a good place for natural selection to occur. So we have competition going on right here. But there's also ecological niche where we have one that can survive low tide and one that prefers to be underwater. We also need to look at predator-prey interactions within communities. In this example down here, so just to go back, I'm sure you guys have had this before in class, but a predator is going to be an organism that feeds off of another organism, which will be the prey. In the example down here, The prey would be the snowshoe hare, and the predator is the Canadian lynx. We look over here at this chart. When there are not many of the snowshoe hare, when that population goes down, which I guess that looks like it's the red, when the snowshoe hare population goes down, then the lynx population is also going to decrease because the snowshoe hare is the lynx's nutrients, the energy that it requires. When the snowshoe hare population goes up, so does the lynx population. And once the lynx population gets higher, it's going to have a huge predatory effect on the snowshoe hare population, which is going to make it go back down. And they're intertwined like that forever. When one goes up, the other goes down. They're dependent on each other to keep their populations in check. There are other things that cause this population cycling to happen, to occur, such as nutrients and seasonal cycles and diseases and other predators. But we do often find predator and prey are very closely tied together in these cycles. Now, an ecosystem, it's very, very complex. It's not, there's not one factor or another. There's many factors that we need to look at. For example, populations, they do interact among themselves, but they also interact with the physical environment, meaning the abiotic conditions, such as the atmosphere, the water, the soil, the nutrients, the pollution. All of these things have a huge effect on communities and populations in an ecosystem. So we have to remember to look at the abiotic factors. Now, of the biotic components, we like to break those into autotrophs and heterotrophs. So remember, biotic components meaning living things. An autotroph is going to be a producer. They're organisms that can produce their own food from the sun. They're able to take sun energy and convert it into a chemical energy. These are autotrophs. Heterotrophs are going to be consumers. They cannot make their own food. They have to consume food or eat food that's generated by a producer. So they're still dependent on food from the sun because they're dependent on producers. They eat the producers. They're consumers. There's different types of consumers. There's herbivores that feed on plants and algae alone. There's carnivores that feed only on other animals. There's omnivores that feed on both plants and animals. Detritivores, they feed on decomposing organic matter. And then there's decomposers. They're organisms that feed on the detritus from the detrivores. So they release inorganic substances which are taken up by the plants. Okay, so I said inorganic substances. Those are chemicals. So if we look at chemicals within a system, chemicals cycle. Inorganic nutrients, they're going to cycle. So once an organism dies, it will decompose, and those nutrients go back into the soil. Producers use them, consumers eat them. Both die, decompose, and go back, and it's just a cycle, continuous. Now, I want to point out that this is different from the energy. Solar energy does not cycle. Chemicals cycle, solar energy does not. Solar energy is going to flow through the system, but at each step, it's lost as heat. So producers use the solar energy and convert it into chemical energy, but a lot of it's lost as heat. The consumers, they eat the producers, and they use it to live, but a lot of it's lost as heat. And decomposers decompose that energy that was within both producers and consumers, and it's lost as heat. It is not reused and recycled like chemicals are. Okay, so we use this cycle so the cycle of the nutrients we can look at. That's actually in another chapter that we're not going to get to. But the energy flow we do look at using something called a food chain is one way. This is not the best way to look at the flow of energy, but we'll start here. A food chain is a diagram showing a single path of energy flow in an ecosystem. So it's going to show this plant down here. I don't know, maybe it's a dandelion. Let's say it's a dandelion. And it gets its energy from the sun, converts solar energy into chemical energy. These bugs, this grasshopper would say, comes and eats part of the dandelion. A bit of its energy has been passed to the grasshopper. Now that grasshopper is then eaten by this wasp. That energy is passed to the wasp. The wasp is eaten by the frog. The energy passes to the frog. The frog is eaten by the snake, and that energy passes to the snake. And the snake is eaten by the hawk. The energy is passed to the hawk. But at each one of these levels, some of that energy is lost and only a bit is left. Which means that at each one of these levels, there's less energy to support those levels. So there's a lot of energy from the sun. We can have a lot of photosynthesizers or primary producers or herbivores. That can be a large layer. The herbivores, there's still plenty of energy in the herbivores, although less than the primary producers. So these are primary consumers, herbivores. Secondary consumers are carnivores. They eat the herbivores. There's less energy now available because at each one of these levels, as the energy's passed, a lot of it's lost as heat and there's less available. By the time you get to the top carnivore, there's not as much energy at all, not nearly as much. So you can see at each one of these levels, the amount of energy shrinks just like a pyramid, and that's why this is called the energy pyramid. Now, the best way to show how energy flows through a system is going to be called an energy or food web. I like it. I like energy web. So what this does is it shows how energy can be passed from organism to all the different populations within a community. And you can see how interconnected everything is. And that takes us right back up to this one right here when you add in the abiotic conditions as well. And that everything is connected. We're all connected to all things in one way or another. I want to make sure that you guys check out the Amoeba Sisters video. I only posted one this time. It is on food webs and how energy flows through a community. Let's see what else I'm going to tell you guys. You have your final coming up. That is next week. This stuff will be on your final, so make sure that you look over it for your final. There won't be an official quiz on this. You'll just see the questions on the final. Just make sure you look over the vocabulary words. If you can look through the PowerPoints, I'm posting them now on Blackboard, so you can look those over. The only other things you need to look through when you're looking at the final, there is a Quizlet, a bunch of different Quizlets that I put up. There's a Quizlet class for you guys. If you need help finding that, just email me and let me know. And then the best way to study for your final is to go through your old tests and quizzes. I take the questions directly from your old tests and quizzes. So if you have those, it will help you immensely. Let me know if you guys need anything. I am so sorry we weren't able to be in the class together this semester, and we are missing our lake field trip. But I am going to post a video instead of having you guys do more lectures. I'm going to post a video for you guys, hopefully by Wednesday, and I will just have a couple questions for you to answer off the video. It's going to be Planet Ocean, and you can use that as both your quiz and your lab that you have left over, so you'll just have a movie to watch. I hope you find that enjoyable. And if you need anything, let me know. I've missed you guys, and thank you for working so hard throughout the semester. I will end it here. Bye, guys.